Cardiff Castle provides the centrepiece for race number 4 in the Kelloggs Cycling Series. The streets around the historic city centre will be closed to traffic as the series comes to Wales for the very first time. Good evening, and for the very first time we've got heavy rain, which is going to make things very hazardous indeed for the riders tonight. But nevertheless, we've got an enthusiastic Welsh crowd and quite a lineup to put before them tonight. First of all, let's welcome back Tony Doyle, fresh from the World Championships last week, where you got that silver medal in the pursuit. A performance which must have satisfied you.
I was very pleased. I recorded 3 personal best times, and the last 2 times at the World Championships I've come away in 4th place without a medal, so I was delighted to come back with the silver.
And a word about the conditions tonight, which are pretty awful, aren't they?
Well, I mean, it's a complete contrast to the 95 degrees we were racing in Barcelona last week. I mean, I've really come back to England.
Right, we won't keep you on the start line too much longer. Alongside you, Gerrie Knetemann from Belgium, the former world road race champion. From Holland, my apologies. Thankfully back to fitness and back to form after a quite horrendous crash and injury a year ago. Tell us exactly what happened there.
It was raining, and there was a car parked beside the road, and I bumped into the car, and my body was not made to bump in a car, so it was a bit of disaster. My leg was broken on 7 places, my arm was broken on 3 places, several things were cut off, and I was in hospital for 2.5 months.
And for a time you were worried about your life as well as your career, weren't you?
Yeah, and then they nailed me together. Quite good. And now I'm here in Cardiff.
Great to see you here. We'll be hearing a bit more about your recovery from injury a bit later on. But perhaps the fiercest confrontation in this series once again will come from these 2 men here. Phil Thomas, the defending champion. Alongside you is Malcolm Elliott, who leads the championship at the moment. Now, last week, Phil, you were watching each other so closely that you were lapped and had to drop out of the race. What exactly went wrong last week?
Well, I think we're just both very stubborn, and we just didn't want to give each other any room whatsoever, and that was the situation we both ended up in, and we got lapped. There's nothing we could do, you know.
Any change of tactics from you tonight?
Hopefully I can do a good ride tonight, probably win. I normally go quite well in the rain, so I'm looking forward to it. Malcolm
Elliott, any lessons for you learned from last week?
Well, basically that's not going to win me the series, and a win here tonight would. It's very wet, very slippery. Got to be a bit cautious tonight, but it's the same for everybody.
There's a bit of a frosty atmosphere when the 2 of you came into the pits last week. What is the rivalry like between you?
Quite intense.
Right, maybe we'll be seeing a bit more of that out here tonight. Okay, well, a dramatic week, of course, last week. Let's see exactly what it did to the championship standings. And here we see Malcolm Elliott out in front, leading Phil Thomas by 2 points, and then a 3-way tie for 3rd place between Jack Kershaw, the Australian Alan Piper, who's missing tonight, and Steve Joughin of England. Right, the race just about to get underway. The rain is still coming down very heavily indeed. Quite a few problems out there for the riders on a very long and a very testing course, and we can get more details on that now from our commentary team of Mick Bennett and Phil Liggett.
So the riders on the start line for what most certainly is the wettest of the Kellogg's Championships we've ever seen. And the hooter there means 30 seconds to go to the off, and the course around the castle grounds very, very demanding indeed. The cobble section to the castle itself is absolutely treacherous. You can see the rain coming down at the moment, and this reminds one a little bit about the world's hardest single-day classic, the Paris-Roubaix Classic, and they refer to this section of road there as the Hell of the North. So the field on the line. One thing about cycle racing is, whatever the weather, it is very, very rarely ever cancelled. And the man in yellow, Malcolm Elliott, very anxious to get away too. And this first circuit, I think, will be a very demanding one indeed, Mick Bennett. So if you'd like to take us around it.
Not only demanding, Phil, but we've got this very slippy road surface on the red asphalt by the start outside the National Museum of Wales. They turn sharp right just after the finish line into Park Place. Not too bad a surface this, but one that will require a lot of concentration before they come into this sharp, sloping right-hander down Boulevard de Nantes. Extremely long straight, approximately 200, 220 yards. Down into Boulevard de Nantes now as we see them go down. The film lane on the right-hand side of the road there. Very, extremely wet, extremely slippy, will require a lot of concentration and probably different tactics from the various teams tonight as well, Phil.
Well, Phil Thomas is one rider who revels in conditions such as we have tonight. He delights in the bad weather. He's an extremely skillful cyclist. and I'm sure he'll be in the thick of it. And Malcolm Elliott in yellow also starting very near the front. And I think with the weather being so bad, Mick, we're going to see the leaders of this championship paying a lot of attention at the front of the bunch.
Yes, indeed. And this part down the end of Kingsway is slightly downhill. They take a very fast right-hander. Will have to single themselves out because they know this cobble section's coming up now as they turn right into the main entrance to the castle. They've got a single file out because it's a very narrow, very cobbled section, and they'll have to take great care not to come down as they approach the castle. Into the castle now. These cobbles will be jarring their legs, arms, and indeed their wrists, because we've got 25, 30 laps of racing, and already the strain's beginning to show in the front of the Mudgecell rider Ian Banbury there.
Banbury first into the castle grounds for the first time, Thomas in second place, and somebody went over the grass there, over the drawbridge. And the surface here, absolutely treacherous. I'm sure the riders are feeling their bicycle move smoothly across the top of this surface, and of course when the rain does come down like this, the brakes lose a lot of their efficiency. And Banbury is well aware of this because he's trying to split this field. He's putting a lot of effort into an attack here. Thomas chases him hard indeed. Elliott's not very far behind. But you can see by the length of the line here, riders are still coming out of the castle grounds. So that completes one lap with Ian Banbury on the front. Thomas second place. And the man in yellow humiliated a little bit, I think, Malcolm Elliott and Phil Thomas when they were lapped by Stephen Roach and Sean Yates at Bristol, which isn't too far away, of course, from Cardiff, and I'm quite sure out to gain revenge tonight.
And indeed, all of these riders on the front now have got reputations, and notorious reputations of being fast into the corners, almost kamikaze style riders. They go flat out into corners, whether it's wet or dry, and consequently they're always up there towards the end of these very tight finishes.
So as the field, a small breakaway goes clear here, the race itself looks to me as though it's becoming fragmented, and that is why Phil Nixon has crashed, the former British champion, so he's the first victim of the weather tonight, and he's quite clearly winded there, possibly struck in the chest by the handlebars of the machine, but Nixon is down and seemingly out of the championship tonight. And that is really, Mick, quite a disaster for Phil Thomas, one of his allies gone there.
Absolutely. Quite obviously what's happened is he's braked too quickly into a corner. When you've got conditions like this that are very, very wet, you have to dry the rims off so that as you approach the corner, you're actually going slow enough to take the corner. If you don't dry your rims off with your brakes quick enough, then down you're going to go, because obviously you're going into the corner much too quickly. But what also happens is the grit from the rain and from the road surface comes up into your eyes, and it blinds you and slows down your reactions.
This is really, it looks like the old Peru baby sitting on the box here, and here's his slap bang in the middle of the world in the
So through the castle grounds again, and Ian Banbury keeping well out of trouble at the front. In fact, the first two riders here haven't changed at all. Banbury, Thomas and Elliott. Stephen Roach I caught a glimpse of there, the winner at Bristol, and not looking at all happy over the cobblestones of Cardiff.
That will tell us that the next time through, the riders will be sprinting for
professional cyclists are well aware of the hazards of professional cycling, and Tony Doyle, as he said at the beginning, high degrees of heat in Barcelona. And look at Tony Doyle, as I speak about him, Doyle is also down. So Tony Doyle is on the grass in the castle grounds and goes back onto the cobbles. Now, all riders who do crash are allowed one lap in which to rejoin the race, and they suffer no penalty whatsoever. But Doyle will have to prove his problem to the race referees, so he's moving off now round to the referees, and then he'll be given his lap out. And well, this fourth event really is quite a sensational opening to the night, Mick.
Absolutely, and Mudgecell have got Ian Banbury on the front there. In fourth place we've got national champion Steve Joughin. Obviously Ian Banbury's doing the work for Steve. They're both in the same team, and it'd be nice to see Steve up there perhaps competing towards the King of the Sprint Series tonight. He's certainly in an ideal position, and as I speak, Steve Joughin attacks down the right-hand side of the road.
So the smallest rider in the race, they call him the Pocket Rocket. Steve Joughin from Douglas in the Isle of Man, now lives in Stoke-on-Trent, tries to go clear. He's already sensing this course is the sort of course, and the conditions tonight are going to create a possible surprise here. So the British road racing champion tries to go clear.
battered and bruised. Exactly what happened?
So I was going across the cobble stretch through the castle, and the back tyre started to lose some pressure, and on the cobble just lost it completely and went onto the grass verge. And I came down quite heavy, and I've had to change the bike, and I'm going to try and get back in now, but I've injured my arm quite badly.
Everyone seems to be losing. Conditions really
Yeah,
bad.
very atrocious. I mean, I've never raced in such bad conditions.
But you can't wait to get back in it, can you?
I'll have a go.
Good luck, Tony.
Thanks.
So Tony rejoins, and what a contrast from just a couple of days ago when Tony Doyle was applauded by 4,000 people in the Velodrome in Barcelona, where he became the runner-up in the World 5,000 metres Individual Pursuit Championship. Phil Baton, who arrived only an hour before this race started from the World Championships in Barcelona, now in third place.
Not only is that cobble section a test of the riders' fitness and stamina, but also a test for the bicycles they're riding, because they're on very light tyres. They've let a lot of the pressure out because it was very wet conditions, and the tyres stay up and keep the rider upright a lot easier if there's less pressure in them.
And still Steve Joughin on the front. Now it's John Wainwright, a teammate of Malcolm Elliott, trying to control the attack. And there's Doyle going in. So Tony Doyle pushed into the race again, back into the fray, bounced off the cobbles of Cardiff Castle, and now back in the action. So Steve Joughin in front, followed by John Wainwright, Ian Bambury, or rather Phil Baton now in third place, and a little gap beginning to form. In fact, that's Bambury in fourth place, Phil Thomas in fifth, and Malcolm Elliott never very far away from the side of Thomas. Remember, of course, just to remind you of the overall situation after our three races, we have Malcolm Elliott with 19 points, Phil Thomas 2 points back with 17, and Jack Kershaw, Alan Piper and Steve Joughin in equal third place with 14 points. Phil Baton now warming his tyres up nicely around the city of Cardiff. No help at all for Baton from John Wainwright. He's trying to control the attack by Baton because in favour of his teammate Malcolm Elliott, who's not too far back in the yellow jersey of leader.
Interesting to note that a lot of the riders wearing those little cotton caps on their heads have got the peaks turned down, because when the heads tip down over the handlebars, it actually keeps the spray from the rain out of their eyes.
Well, I'm afraid these conditions are meaning we're not seeing too much of the great Dutch cyclist Gerrie Knetemann, because of course these are the very conditions in which Gerrie Knetemann almost lost his life in the village of Wetteren in Belgium about 18 months ago. And I'm quite sure that although he races again now, memories will come flooding back to him tonight as he goes in and out of the castle grounds, and we haven't seen anything at all of him at the front half of the field.
These cobbles are jarring their arms with the riders. You can see the biceps of John Wainwright and Phil Baton been thrown all over the place, and it's very hard when it's like this, because it's a great strain on the wrists, especially over 25-30 laps. Out over the drawbridge and turning right now, and the line of the riders hasn't really changed much in the first 4 or 5 laps as we come up to this. 2 laps to go now for a King of the Sprints series.
And laps being covered at the moment at an average speed a little over 24 miles an hour. That's an indication of the difficulty of the course tonight. We've been seeing lap speeds of up to 30 miles an hour in Nottingham, Manchester and Bristol. And as the riders come through now, we are coming to the climax of the first King of the Sprints of the evening. 2 laps to go. Baton goes through in the lead, brakes very hard for that right-hand bend. There we are, 2 laps to go to the sprint. Now, just once more to remind you what the Kings of the Sprint competition is. It's fought for separately completely from the Kelloggs Championship, and the first 4 riders across the line receive 5, 3, 2 and 1 points, and there are 3 Kings of the Sprint tonight, and the cumulative points over all the races produce a leader. But sadly and unfortunately, Alan Piper from Australia was unable to find a flight from Brussels today and hasn't arrived to defend his overall lead, and this is going to be a bonus for the riders who are chasing Piper for the overall title. An excellent chance indeed for riders like Steve Fleetwood, lying 2nd overall, Stephen Roach from Dublin and Sean Yates from Sussex to close the gap on runaway leader at the moment, Alan Piper.
It really is very frustrating in these sort of conditions, because you make an extreme effort along a straight flat section that's given you enough time to attack on, but you have to start slowing down much sooner than you do in dry conditions, and consequently the bunch come up to you that much quicker, and therefore it's that much harder to break away. But Phil Baton glancing over his right-hand shoulder there just to check how far the bunch are behind him, and my guess is that he'll sit up and wait for the next attack.
Well, you can see by the tail of the field there are a number of riders now afraid of the corners, and the tyres on these machines weigh between 6 and 7 ounces, and they're pumped up to a pressure of around 110 pounds a square inch. And so there is very little part of the bicycle actually in contact with the road under normal conditions, and tonight it is extremely difficult indeed. And certainly this circuit around the city of Cardiff is the most picturesque we've had so far in the championships, and it is a great shame it's raining tonight. John Wainwright at the front here trying to keep the pace high. So Wainwright comes through, and now we have 1 lap to go for the first of the King of the Sprints competition tonight. Next time around, the first 4 riders receive 5, 3, 2 and 1 points, and the overall situation at the moment in this competition, Alan Piper of Australia leads it with 27 points. Steve Fleetwood from Liverpool, a member of the Ever-Ready team, is second with 16 points, so Fleetwood 11 points behind and could gain well here tonight in the absence of Piper.
Could gain, Phil, but Steve's got a hell of a problem. He's got sprained ligaments on his left foot. He's had 3 physio treatments today already, had ice packs on it all night, got it well strapped up there, so he told me before the start it's given him a lot of pain, but it'll be interesting to see how he fares in this first sprint.
Well, that's certainly bad news for Fleetwood, but he's there at the front at the moment. He's the rider in the red on the right of the screen now, so he's certainly going to give it a go for the points tonight. Wainwright comes through, Banbury in second place, Nigel Dean also there. Fleetwood moved very nicely into third spot on that corner, and Malcolm Elliott came into 4th place. So Elliott's real aim tonight, of course, is to consolidate his overall lead in the series for that yellow jersey, but still anxious to stay at or near the front because of the conditions.
And that's when it becomes dangerous, because the riders start bunching up, they start fighting for the position more, they break later, so consequently the speeds are much higher, and down they go 9 times out of 10. So it'll be interesting to see these sprints tonight, whether most of the riders can stay upright that are contesting them.
Well, very, very gently going round the corner and entering the castle grounds again onto the cobbled section. And despite the rain, the city of Cardiff has turned out in quite a few thousand spectators here tonight. Banbury on the front, Fleetwood in second place. And the field splitting up like we've never seen it before in the championship series. Banbury on the front, Fleetwood riding well in second place despite his tendon problems. And you saw Fleetwood slip then as he came round that bend, almost fell. Ian Banbury, 1 glance over his shoulder, and Fleetwood challenges him now, so Steve Fleetwood could take 5 very valuable points here, and he's going to go clear of Banbury. It's neck and neck to the line. Fleetwood is trying very hard. He walks it in the end by a good 2 lengths, so 5 points for Steve Fleetwood. That gives him 21 overall, and just 6 now behind the overall leader, Alan Piper.
Just as I said, trying to go into the corner that little bit too quickly, your concentration lapses, you're thinking of the finish line and not that last corner, and he nearly cooked it there, but managed to stay upright, and fortunately for himself, he's gained maximum points. Ian Banbury's using this position now. The riders have eased on the front, loves these fast corners because he's got no nerve at all, this Modricel rider. And there he is, classic attack off the front, just after a King of the Sprint sprint.
So the end of the first sprint, and in the pits with me now, Tony Doyle. You've retired from the race. Does that mean you picked up quite a serious injury?
Well, I've damaged my shoulder. I don't think it's too serious, but it's very slippery out there. I mean, the course is dangerous, and it would have been quite dangerous in dry conditions, but with the torrential rain we've got, I mean, it really is bad out there. And I was slipping and sliding all over the place.
Would you say, in a way, the course is too dangerous?
I mean, as I said, it'll be dangerous in the drying tonight. I mean, it really is dangerous. I mean, the number of people who've had spills already. I mean, I wouldn't like to be out there. I mean, I've had enough tonight, and with my fall, you know, I'm going to get myself ready because I've got a big pursuit match at Leicester on Saturday, and hopefully I'll recover in time for Saturday. Better
safe than sorry. Gerrie Knetemann has retired as well. You must have a bit of sympathy with that as well.
That's right. Gerrie was very dubious. I mean, when he was warming up on the circuit, he nearly came off once then, and I understand he had a few problems as well on the circuit. I mean, it's very tight. He's an experienced rider, and he thought better of it.
OK, Tony, sorry to see you out of the race, but we'll be back with more of this spectacular action from Cardiff in just a few minutes' time.
I'm just taking my dog for a walk. Toodles, heel. He follows me everywhere, especially when I've got a bag of Smith Square crisps. Well, they're not really crisps. They're more of a crunch than a crisp. Do you want one, Toodles? Actually, Toodles isn't really a dog. Are you, Toodles? Smith Square crisps. The crisp that isn't a crisp.
Okay, lads, give them a taste of it.
Kestrel Productions present The Kestrel Has Landed. Catering Corps mission to get Kestrel Lager behind enemy bars. They took the enemy completely by surprise.
Kestrel kegs away, Ginger!
Kegs away, Skip. They took everything we threw at them.
Look at the ships. Sinks the Kestrel.
And still they came back for more.
To get better copies, you need better copiers. The Rank Xerox 10 series includes copiers that not only show you what to do, but give you double-sided copies automatically. Check every print for copy quality, enlarge and reduce. They even produce finished documents. Everything, in fact, to make your presentation more impressive. The Xerox 10 series.
Thank you, Hotpoint, for being there when I need you. For extras like drink chillers, four-way cooking, and economy wash programs. Thank you for your free 5-year parts guarantee, your 48-hour fair service pledge, and just for being there to rely on. Thank you, Hotpoint.
She thinks we ought to look after ourselves. Get some exercise. Don't have too much caffeine. Cafe Hug decaffeinated. Just smooth, rich coffee. Tastes smashing. I'm not too keen on the exercise bit, but Cafe Hug's an excellent idea. When coffee tastes this good, who needs caffeine?
Back here at Cardiff, we've had the first sprint in absolutely torrential rain, and it's a brave man who won it. Here's the full result. Steve Fleetwood, the winner, taking it from Ian Banbury. Phil Baton in third place, and fourth was Malcolm Elliott. Sadly, another retirement with me in the pits now. Shaun Yates, a winner last week in Bristol. Quite a contrast here, isn't it?
Certainly is a contrast, especially because I've just come back from Barcelona today where it's 90 degrees. It's just, I'm not prepared to take the risk, to stay out with the fun people who I'd like to be racing it out, but
that is a simple problem for you. You think it's too dangerous?
I just think it's too dangerous. I like to be racing with the front. It's just not worth continuing around off the back. I like to be racing with the best, and I'm just not prepared to take risks in this time, in these conditions.
But the race will go on. What kind of a rider is going to win this, do you think?
A brave rider.
Shaun Yates, sad to see you in the pits. Let's get back to the action and our commentators, Mick Bennett and Phil Liggett.
And so this is Ian Banbury, and conditions, if anything, are slightly worse now. The rain still coming down in torrents. So the British summer coming to an end with a vengeance tonight, and Phil Thomas enjoying it, because this rider from Liverpool really does excel on the wet roads, Mick.
Ever watchful Malcolm Elliott there, poised right on his shoulder, watching for any move that Phil Thomas makes. He's going to be there with him. But Ian Banbury's been away now on his own for 4 or 5 laps, just been caught by Phil Thomas and Malcolm there. And looking back, checking if Steve Joughin's there, the little sprinter, up right behind him now, but as Phil Thomas very cautiously takes this very hairy approach into the cobble section into the castle.
So the long line of riders depreciating lap by lap. I'm afraid we've lost Tony Doyle, we've lost Gerrie Knetemann, and we've lost last week's winner, Sean Yates. But Phil Thomas, lapped remembered at Bristol with Malcolm Elliott. I think now riding to prove that may have been a tactical mistake, but it won't happen twice because he's on the front, and the conditions are making the riders in the event tonight appear what they really are, extremely courageous.
This is also a very courageous corner to take at speed, Phil. It's sharp right, followed by a sharp left and a sharp right again into this very slippy, red asphalted finishing straight now. Phil Thomas loves these sort of conditions because he's a short, stocky rider, low centre of gravity, so he glues his bicycle to the road. And as I speak, Steve Fleetwood comes into the action again there. A rider full of injury tonight, but been up there courageously in the first King of the Sprints competition.
Well, this could be a good night for Fleetwood because, of course, the overall leader in the King of the Sprints, Alan Piper, whose familiar green jersey has been seen last week at Bristol and the week before that at Nottingham, is not here. Trouble with his flight from Brussels meant he didn't arrive in time for the event, and so Steve Fleetwood in second place, a good chance now of moving closer or maybe even gaining the overall lead in that competition. So there's Fleetwood. Where's number 8, if you catch a glimpse of him? Third in line at the moment, but this is Ian Bambury, and Bambury seems to be enjoying these conditions. He's been on the attack since the race began, always checking who's where, and an attack on the far side of the road by Neil Stevens, a young Australian, only 20 years of age, and what a good attack this is.
Yes, this young ANC rider, very courageous, quite a strong little lad. Again, one of these short riders, low centre of gravity, can take these corners extremely quickly. Has spent the last part of the season over here in England, rode the Spenco 500 early March of this year, 500-mile event, a strict contrast to tonight's event, just over an hour of racing, and certainly showing no dent in his speed from that event early on in the season.
Well, there we have Neil Stevens. In fact, in that race across America, Neil was 5th, and that really is quite an achievement at 20 years of age. And now he's trying to slip the field. The advantage, of course, I think, with the riders who are prepared to attack, because they're away from the spray, they have better visibility, and they have a better sighting of the corners.
Yes, that's quite true, and also you don't have riders coming left and right of you as you approach the bend. You can take your own line, pick your own time, change gear just as Neil's done here, because we've got a very tricky section over this hard-boarded bridge here. As they turn right again, smooth tarmac, and then just disappearing behind the trees to come into the finishing straight. But being small, he can pick his own line, and he's quite safe into these corners.
Well, this is the dangerous chicane, and I think Stevens has lost quite a bit of ground here. Bambury's the man doing the damage behind. Ian Bambury, who hasn't had a lot of success in this championship series. In the Kellogg's Championships a year ago, he was very much a man among the action, especially in the King of the Sprints competition. But as the riders come through this time, it's another special sprint for the King of the Sprints. 2 laps to go, and Stevens has the advantage. Sees the corner first, brakes hard. Little touch of the brakes first to clear the surface water off the rims of the wheels, and then puts the brakes on fully applied.
Tells me earlier on tonight that he goes home in 2 weeks' time, and he's got to show his sponsor ANC that he's been worthy of the sponsorship that they've given him since early March of this year. Also told me that his father, funnily enough, won a race earlier on in the week, and this has given him the morale. He says, I can't go home and knowing that my dad's won a race and I haven't won a race this year. So he's had to show not only the British public but also the Australian public that he's a jolly good rider.
So the determination of Stevens then, and the gap beginning to open on this very important lap. 1.5 laps away from the King of the Sprints, 5, 3, 2 and 1 point on the line, of course. And a very good opening tonight by Fleetwood, who has 5 points. Bambury was 2nd, Baton 3rd, and Malcolm Elliott was 4th. And so we're now on the 2nd sprint of the night, and Neil Stevens out in front. And the conditions here a lot different from Australia. There he goes around the sharp right-hand bend. Extremely dangerous corner, that one. Into the castle grounds once again, then across the cobblestones, and really it was the cobblestones where we expected all of the problems, especially if it rained. But it does appear that a number of the accidents are happening on the smoother roads, which are now covered with a layer of surface water.
I'm quite amazed actually, because one would have thought in the wet conditions there's a slight camber on these cobbles and indeed a slight rise in them, that they would have lacked traction on the back wheel and they'd have been sliding all over the place. But as we've seen here tonight in the first half and indeed now, they're moving quite well and quite consistently over this cobble section. And as Phil said, we seem to be having extreme problems in the corners. They're clipping that one very, very tight. Wouldn't surprise me later on if one or two of them don't take to the grass on that section.
So the lone figure of Stevens taking the corners wide, but having all the advantages at the moment. And the great rivalry between Malcolm Elliott from the rally team and Phil Thomas from the Falcon team goes on behind him. Both riders having had a win this weekend on Saturday and Sunday, so proving all the time they seem to be Britain's riders of the moment, and now trying to continue here and see what will happen. Elliott in yellow, Phil Thomas very, very close to him. 3 riders behind him, in fact. And the riders now on the sprint lap. Stevens hoping at least to survive to take 5 points through the finish next time.
The rain in amongst his chamois leather, it must be so painful. I feel...
Steve Joughin, the British road race champion, won his title on the Isle of Man in June. And what a great delight that was for him, because he lives in Douglas.
Young Nearhill, given it everything he's got. He's probably on one of the lightest bikes in the race. This aluminium frame that he's riding, this Peugeot bicycle, one of the lightest bicycles, and I'm surprised that he's cornering so well, because normally a heavier bike tends to corner better in these sort of conditions. But Neil doesn't seem to be having any problems with that machine tonight.
Well, here he comes again, edging nearer and nearer the end of the lap for the second round in the King of the Sprints tonight. And of course, remember, Alan Piper of Australia not here, so that's why we're not seeing the green jersey of points leadership around the circuit today. And Piper, I'm sure, will be very annoyed about missing his flight from Brussels, because he was also in Barcelona this week. And the bunch packing for the corner here, and it really is becoming quite a small bunch too. Although the leaders in this competition are still very much in that bunch, it is getting smaller lap by lap. Look at the face of Stevens now. You see the rain driving down as Stevens goes through the castle grounds once again, over the cobbles, being shaken all the time, and now the field being stretched. This is Danny Clark of Australia, so one Australian in pursuit of another, and Fleetwood comes in again. Fleetwood into third place. So Steve Fleetwood is beginning to look as though he could well take that green jersey of Alan Piper's tonight with a bit of success in these sprints. He's won one already.
Danny Clark, the Halford rider there, saw a unique opportunity to take to the grass. Hopefully nobody else saw that move. None of the judges are around that area, so he took to the grass, sought a bit of a shortcut, took advantage of it, and he's off in pursuit of young Neil Stevens here, who's just coming up to Adrian Lee, a lap rider there, will have to be pulled out of the event, but it'd be interesting to see if Danny Clark actually catches young Neil.
So Stevens takes 5 points. The sprint now for second place, and this is going to Danny Clark of Australia. He gets 3. Then Fleetwood gets 2 points, a very valuable 2 points indeed, and Phil Thomas takes 1 in fourth place there. But the field is fragmented at the moment, and this is the rider doing all of the damage. So Fleetwood catching a lap rider, he will be eliminated. Stevens goes on, and this attack now beginning to look as though it could possibly be setting the seal of the winning move of the evening. Fleetwood goes through. So Fleetwood is out, having taken third place tonight. Stevens goes on now on his lone battle to try and stay clear of the field, and the field in all sorts of trouble behind.
Still absolutely torrential rain, atrocious conditions here in Cardiff, but we're seeing a marvellously brave performance, not only from Neil Stevens, but from all the riders out there. We'll be back with the climax of this City Centre race in Cardiff in just a couple of minutes' time.
When you need a little lift, but you just can't take a break, chew Wrigley's Spearmint Gum.
The cool, refreshing feeling of Wrigley's Spearmint Gum puts a little lift in everything you do. That good, smooth chewing, that crisp, clean taste, that Wrigley's Spearmint pickup is going for you. Wrigley's Spearmint Gum really keeps you buzzing. Wrigley's Spearmint Gum keeps you buzzing along. Wrigley's Spearmint Gum really keeps you buzzing. Wrigley's Spearmint Gum keeps you buzzing.
Get right on target with industrial property from SDA Property Marketing. A complete range of units from 1,000 to 100,000 square feet, all ready to move into. Development grants, discretionary grants, and low-rate loans. See if you're eligible. Negotiable terms, especially on refurbished and larger units. Perfect locations countrywide. For commercial and industrial properties, get on target with SDA Property Marketing. Free phone SDA now.
It is straight, square, curved, circular, the precise shape of every moving part it clings to, lubricating, cooling, and protecting. Oil is too small a word for it. It is Castrol GTX liquid engineering. Fit it in your engine.
The new Hair and Good Looks book gives you so many totally different looks for hair, faces, and other places. You'll never be the same again. You'll never be the same again.
What do I look for in a hero? Should he star at the Highland Games? Should he do what no man has done before, is catching the caper, a claim to fame? No, it's when I catch a man pouring Tartan Special that I rush to shake his hand. And when we taste that magic brew. And when I taste that magic brew, he's the greatest in Scotland.
Support your local hero and his Younger's Tartan Special.
Back at Cardiff, we rejoin the brave ride of leader Neil Stevens. Conditions worse than ever.
And there's Stevens on the front now, being pursued by Danny Clark, and Stevens is gone. What a terrible crash. What a shock. Stevens went down that right-hand bend. Clark has gone through on the inside. And Neil Stevens is getting back on his bike. Well, under the rules, he's allowed one lap out in which to recover. What a great shame that was. Stevens hits the deck at a terrible speed. Danny Clark of Australia has gone through, and so Clark is now the man out in front. There he is, and the bunch behind still chasing. Malcolm Elliott in yellow, Phil Thomas marking him closely. Phil Baton here in green, so the pack will have seen Stevens fall. That really is a sap blow. But the Australian man at the front his place taken by Danny Clark, so there's still an Australian man out in the lead.
Neil, you okay? Are you okay? Back crash. Neil Stevens groaning in the pits here. He's got a bad gash on his knee. You're going to get back in the race. Literally groaning with agony. He's ready to go back. He's shaking his head. Neil, what's the problem?
I've landed on my hip. I've hurt my hip real bad. I don't know if I'll be able to go on.
Brave performance. What happened in the crash?
I saw Danny coming, and I wanted to stay clear. I wanted to get more points up. I just took that corner down there too fast, hit up the mole, and down I went. There's a lot of falls over that corner.
Very dangerous if you can get back in the race. I'm sure everyone's with you.
Thank you very much.
And so there is the rider who witnessed Neil Stevens fall at very close range there as Danny Clark went through on the inside. That really was a nasty shock, Mick.
Yeah, but what can you do? I mean, you're going to the corner much too quickly. He saw Danny, glanced behind him, saw Danny Clark coming there, increased his tempo, probably lost a little bit of concentration into the corner. Down he went, but by rights, they should let him rejoin. not in the bunch, but with Danny, because he was in that position when he fell.
So now it's Tony James on the front. His arm warmers on the night there, saturated in rain. The weight of the water's pulling them down his arms, and what a terrible night it is. Races go on all over the world, but really, and there's Neil Stevens goes back in the race, so as the race comes through, he's been pushed back in. That's a very good decision by the referees. They've allowed Neil Stevens here to go back in the race with Danny Clark, because he was in the lead when he fell. So I think that was a very good decision indeed.
Yes, and a fair one, Phil. So we've got Halfords and ANC both doing battle up there at the front now. One would have thought that Neil Stevens' whole rhythm, the whole tempo that he was going at has been upset now, and it'd be interesting to see whether he can hang on to Danny Clark and whether he's going to swap turns with Danny towards his latter half of the race. He doesn't seem to be showing any ill effects, but indeed he's swinging out to the right there and he's taking the lead, so it shows that he's going extremely well despite the fall.
So I think we can take a look now at the result of the King of the Sprints. Second sprint, there it is. Neil Stevens of Australia getting a well-deserved 5 points. Danny Clark third, second with 3 rather. Fleetwood doing well with 2. Phil Thomas claiming another 4th place and 1 point. And there's the overall situation tonight. Fleetwood scoring highly in the absence of Piper with 7 points. Stevens with 5, and Banbury and Danny Clark taking 3 apiece. Well, you can see now the conditions are appalling. The light is fading on us, and the 2 riders are both from Australia in the front, and Neil Stevens must be in terrible, terrible pain, but he's anxious now to hold on to the bitter end, and Danny Clark, twice a world champion, is there to guide him through it.
What a courageous ride this young Neil's doing there. He knows that he goes home in 2 weeks' time. He wants to do something before he leaves, so he leaves his mark on the British scene, and indeed he's doing it here tonight. One of the most heroic rides I've ever seen. For a rider to come down, having been away for 4 or 5 laps off the front, in treacherous conditions, get back on again, be put back into the race, and he's up there swapping turn for turn with Danny Clark. And Phil Thomas here knows that he's got to get maximum points. He's got to chase the 2 of them to get these maximum points, because he needs them to overtake Malcolm Elliott.
Well, Elliott in yellow, and Elliott and Thomas have ridden this race in tandem tonight. They've been everywhere together, marking each other very, very closely, because as the point system dictates, with 10 points to the winner, down to 1 point for the 10th man again tonight in the series, it means that if Phil Thomas finished, for example, first, and Malcolm Elliott finished third, then Phil Thomas would be the overall leader. So 2 laps to go now for the third and final sprint of the night. 2 Australians in the lead. And Steve Fleetwood rather would be very, very pleased indeed if he could steal a few more points tonight. In the murk here, Danny Clark seeing the corner first. This is the bend which claimed Neil Stevens a couple of laps ago. Stevens takes it a little bit more cautiously now, glances over his shoulder, sees what sort of gap they're making, and you can see the conditions and how bad they are here in Cardiff City tonight.
And they're certainly not shirking any of the work there. The pair of them are working. I know that you take your turn in the front, you brake, you ride into the slipstream of the rider that's on the front of you. Momentarily you can take a breather while that rider does all the work on the front, and then you swap over. And not only is it raining here tonight, but it's very, very windy, so this pace-making is very crucial. And my bet is that they're doing half a lap each. I'm amazed at the way Neil Stevens has recovered from that crash.
Well, I'm quite sure, Mick, he's going to be an extremely sore young man by about 11 o'clock tonight, when the legs begin to stiffen up and all the bruises start to come through. But Clark is out in front with him, and I must say I'm a little surprised at Danny Clark remaining in this race, because he had a terrible crash in the winter this year when he broke his hip on the 6-day boards of the indoor velodromes. And he said to me in Barcelona he was now not quite the man he was. He was very nervous in the big bunches, and I would have thought tonight was the night to be extremely nervous.
I would have as well, Phil, but he doesn't seem to be nervous to me. He's doing his turns on the front, but maybe he's happier. Now he's off the front, he's just got one rider to contend with. He hasn't got a bunch screaming to the left and right shoulders of him, and so he probably feels a lot safer there. They can take their own line, as I said earlier, and they're not rushed. They can go into the corner, give it effort into the straights, and we've got quite long straights here, and possibly Danny feels a lot safer out on the front.
And here they are, Danny Clark doing the majority of the pacemaking now. As the hooter goes for the third and final King of the Sprints tonight, Clark in the lead, Stevens in second place, 1 lap to go to the sprint. The bunch are certainly not allowing the two Australians very much rope at all. They can see them here as they go through the finish. Fine piece of pace-making by Danny Clark. You can see by how far he's pulling those brake levers back, how hard the brakes have to apply to get any grip at all on the rims. Very often when you apply your brakes and it's raining so heavily, the bike actually accelerates before it begins to slow down. It's a strange sensation.
Not only is it strange, but it's also very difficult when you're riding behind a rider because the spray comes up off the back wheel, into your eyes, into your mouth. You find you're chewing grit after about half of the event in rainy conditions like this. You have to keep wiping your eyes, and young Neil Stevens keeps glancing behind him. He's checking. He's obviously nervous. Danny's used to being in this position. It's new to Neil this year. He hasn't had such good form. It's coming right for him now, and hopefully Danny and himself are going to get to the finish. My mind is that these two will stay away until the finish laps.
Well, there's still a number of riders in that big field that wouldn't agree with you, Mick. Not least, of course, Phil Thomas and Malcolm Elliott. Thomas has to go wherever Elliott goes, and vice versa. And this is Sid Barris, a teammate of Phil Thomas, now setting the pace to try and reel in the Australian tandem as they come here through the castle grounds once again over the rickety cobbles.
The difficulty is when you've got a gap like this and you're chasing in the bunches, it's extremely hard to close the gap because they're going at maximum speed on the front, you're going at maximum speed on the front, you can't take more risk than they're taking on the front, and consequently gaps like this that develop late in the race nearly always stay away.
And so the determination of Danny Clark coming back into form again. He was 33 just a couple of days ago, and he tried desperately to celebrate that with his third World Keirin Championship in Barcelona. He didn't quite make it. He did get through to the final, though, and then didn't find the speed to put him in the medals at the end. Clark goes through, and a good cheer from the crowd here. Quite a big crowd there is, too, considering the rain, which is absolutely torrential. But the points that time, Neil Stevens claimed another 5 points. So an excellent night for Neil. Despite falling, he's collected 10 points in the King of the Sprints. Danny Clark takes 3 points for the second time tonight. And the gap beginning to close, I think. That's Keith Lambert there looking for Phil Thomas, his teammate. Lambert may well be going back into the race. He could have had a lap out.
They really can't ease off at all. They've got to keep gritting the teeth as young Neil Stevens is doing there. The rain hasn't eased off at all. It's absolutely torrential now, getting heavier every minute. And Danny Clark takes that corner very gingerly. It's flooding with water, as most of the corners are here tonight. But they're out the saddle, going all the way. They've got to keep going, even on these downhill sections, which are extremely quick. As we can see, the light there is glistening across the top of the road surface.
Well, had it been dry here in Cardiff tonight, I would have rated this course as the best of the series. Apart from its extremely picturesque sections through the castle grounds, the corners, the long straights, the wide roads, all contributed to what should have been an excellent circuit race here. But we've had our surprises, not least, of course, the loss of Tony Doyle, who fell very early on. And Tony Doyle now having to put up 2 very good performances at Birmingham and Glasgow to get back into the overall situation because he missed last week racing in Barcelona. You see the sort of gap now as the field begins to split up in these closing laps. 3 riders are getting clear here, and it looked to me as though Phil Baton in that green jersey is in that chasing group. So Neil Stevens now having to grit his teeth even harder, because as this race draws to an end, the chase is on now to catch the 2 Australian leaders. 1 lap to go. Stevens looks over his shoulder, just sees Danny Clark. The Staffordshire engine, Phil Baton is chasing, and look at the speed of Baton. And I would like to see a closer look at that field behind, because I didn't notice the bright yellow jersey of Malcolm Elliott in that chasing group, and Phil Thomas most certainly has joined the 3 chasers here with Baton. So it looks as though Malcolm Elliott, Mick rather, has gone missing.
Way out of the race. My mind is he's come down, but Danny Clark here isn't leaving it to the sprint. He's going way out in front, keeping the pressure on. Young Neil Stevens has got to get onto that back wheel and recover before the sprint, but Danny Clark's not leaving it to the sprint as I would have reckoned on. He's going flat out at the bell.
And so Clark in the lead now, and they are dangling so close to the front of the chasers. In that chasing group is Phil Baton. Also there we have Phil Thomas. And Steve Joughin, I think, is in the group too. We'll have a look now as they go round. Baton, Joughin it is. Phil Thomas is there. No sign at all of Malcolm Elliott. Now, if Elliott has fallen, then Phil Thomas is certain now to take the overall lead in this championship, setting himself ready to win the series as he did a year ago. And Clark now beginning to move clear of Neil Stevens. I think Stevens still feeling the effects of that crash, but what a ride he's doing, because he's not getting on, he's not losing the ground at all to those three chasers. And here's the bunch, and there is no sign of Malcolm Elliott. The yellow jersey has gone, and news coming in that Elliott has in fact crashed around the back of the circuit. And Phil Thomas, I believe, has joined these chasing groups after missing Elliott by inches. So as this race is now spread-eagled around the streets of Cardiff, the courage of these professionals no longer in doubt at all. What a ride they put up, those who have survived to the end. And Danny Clark now pushing for victory. What will be his first race victory of the year? And what a recovery from a broken hip of a few months ago.
Neil Stevens just hanging off the back of Danny Clark, can't get his will, must hang on for this finish as they come into the finishing straight. He must hang on. He can't let Phil Baton, Steve Joughin or Phil Thomas catch him, because those laps that he's been out solo on his own are going to be all wasted.
And so there's Danny Clark, punches the air, sees the flag now. He's absolutely delighted with this. He broke clear, he took all the risk, and Clark comes home, and Neil Stevens hangs on to second place. He deserves that. He really deserves that. In third place, Steve Joughin, the British Road Race champion. Phil Thomas gets fourth. Phil Baton is fifth. Ian Bambury is sixth. Well, Clark is the winner, but Phil Thomas, in the absence of Malcolm Elliott, will become the new lead